Wall Street Unplugged looks beyond the regular headlines heard on mainstream financial media to bring you unscripted interviews and breaking commentary direct from Wall Street right to you on Main Street.
What's going on out there? It's April 12th. I'm Frank Curzio, just the Wall Street Unplugged podcast. So we break the headlines and tell you what's really moving these markets. So we have earnings season, which is about to start this week. Banks are reporting. Should be fun. Tell everyone that we're getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and we love this. We're really, really, really too big to fail. They're all going to report starting this week. An inflation report out later today. Everyone on TV talking about if earnings are going to be weak, since estimates have come down dramatically. So what you're going to see is companies beating estimates that have been revised probably about 10, 15% lower. It's going to be interesting to see. Wow, earnings season was great, even though NVIDIA's earnings fell 20% year over year. But it was great. It beat the estimates. On TV, we're going to hear about the macro backdrop. Is it strong? Is it okay? Yet, we have 6% of families are living paycheck to paycheck, according to the latest CNBC poll. Mark, where the IMF just cut its global GDP forecast to its weakest level in 30 years. In an environment where stocks are crazy expensive, especially relative to interest rates, and where demand is falling off a cliff. But if you own stocks, you have a 401k, all the shit I just mentioned means absolutely nothing and meaningless next to what I'm about to tell you. Now, I don't know if you've been paying attention to China, who's getting this coalition of countries to reduce its reliance on the U.S. dollar. I used to think this was a big joke. I used to make fun of Doug Casey, who's a friend of mine, and say, hey, Doug, I just saw your presentation last week. I mean, it was the same one from 1979 of you telling us that the U.S. dollar is going to lose its reserve currency status. And Doug would be like, you know what, Frank, F you. And I'll play Texas Hold'em with him, which is a very good Texas Hold'em player. But even with the Bill Bonners of the world, I'm sure a lot of you follow, from Gora to the Rick Rules. I never believed in that. I was like, no way, that's never going to happen. But as you know me, being independent, I don't really care about anything other than the data, right? It's the data that drives you. It can't be personal. You can't have this agenda. That's why I always hated these people who had this agenda, no matter what the market conditions were. Market's going to crash. Inflation is going to happen. From 2010 to 2019, we've heard that same story. Yet, if you have interest rates at zero and you're flooding the market with cash, constantly buying bonds to the Fed that has an unlimited printing press, just keep it on 24 hours a day, every day of the year, you have no choice. If you look at the data, you had to own assets, anything, any kind of asset. Whether it was art, collectibles, the stock market, housing. Look at those patterns of all those people who told you to buy gold, and gold was one of the ones that didn't do well because it's not really an asset tied to the government spending. It's an asset that's kind of conservative that you're like, oh, let me buy, and it's a store of value where there's no reason to even look at gold when everything else in the shittiest idea is going up 300% in a matter of a year or two. So I used to make fun of these people. Now I'm not making fun of them anymore because the data has changed. When China executes its first LNG trade using the yuan instead of the dollar, you have to take notice. When the Saudis in China are currently in discussions about accepting the yuan instead of the dollar for oil trade, first time since the early 70s when Nixon took us off the gold standard, you have to pay attention. So now what do we have? We have the BRIC nations. BRICS stands for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and throw in South Africa. Many people think it's BRICS with an apostrophe S, but it's actually BRICS. The S stands for something. Interesting. South Africa. They're working together to create a universal digital currency to reduce their reliance on the dollar. Sounds like fantasy shit, right? No way, that's never going to happen. Again, I've been saying this many, many years. But listen up. Just listen to the facts. So you have State Duma Deputy Chairman, that's basically the Speaker of the House for Russia. This is what he said, and I'm quoting here, just the other day. The transition to settlements in a national currencies is the first step. The next one is to provide the circulation of digital or any other form of a fundamentally new currency in the nearest future. And at the coming BRICS summit, which is being held in August, by the way, says the readiness to realize this project will be announced. Such works are underway. He then said this new digital currency could be secured not just by gold, but also by other groups of products like rare earth elements or soil. This is really happening right now. We never had presidents of nations come out on public stages and say this. Yeah, you can say whatever you want behind scenes and stuff like that. Not when you have these summits and meetings with the flags from each country and you're saying this on a national stage. And by the way, you're not going to find a lot of this shit on Google. They suppressed it. Go to TikTok, go to Twitter. You might find a few things on Google. Not all this stuff. Even on YouTube, you're not going to find a lot of it. You should see what they're saying at these conferences. But now, which is a surprise, we have France joining the party. France! President Macron just visited China 2 days ago, announced that Europe needs to rely less on the US dollar. We're talking about France. It was like the LA Clippers. They want to be the big player in town, but no matter how much noise they make, they'll never be the Lakers. Well, France, he just wants to be a major player in Europe, but nobody really pays attention to France. You don't say, oh, France, UK, Germany. Well, pay attention to France. Because President Macron said on stage with President Xi, this is a couple of days ago, quoting, Europe must resist pressure to become America's followers. He also wants to build a third superpower in Europe, which will be led by himself, of course, and that Europe should reduce its dependence on the US dollar. France, Europe. This is where I wish Donald Trump was still president. Because Trump would have called Macron the second he heard that and said, hey, buddy, just a reminder. We are the largest foreign investor. We have over 4,500 businesses in France supporting 500,000 jobs, which helps support your economy. Unless you want us to shut off your LNG supply and make your economy crash, keep your effing mouth shut about the US dollar and this fantasy third superpower nonsense. So we have Biden, probably thinks France is a type of butterfly right now. But in all seriousness, under Biden, France, I'll say it, I'm sorry I'm going to curse, fucking hates us. So in 2021, Biden announced a newly formed alliance. It was with Australia and the UK that gives these nations access to U.S. nuclear subs. Okay, sounds pretty cool. Well, right after that deal was struck, Australia turned around and gave the finger to France and canceled a $66 billion contract to purchase 12 diesel-powered submarines. They went out there, France, they made it very, very clear how pissed off they were, to the point where Biden apologized and said we could have handled it a little bit better. But then Biden turns around and brings the Inflation Reduction Act, which authorizes $370 billion. That's a package of green subsidies to be allocated to construction of wind turbines, solar panels, microprocessors, electric vehicles in the U.S. But more specifically, within this plan, includes a $7,500 tax credit for buys of EVs manufactured in the U.S. that also have U.S. manufactured batteries. So you cut out all of Europe in the EV for this trend because they can't compete with price. Kind of like what China does when they dump steel on the market, or what they do with rare earth elements. When you cut a lot of that stuff off, there's a big reason why steel companies are doing much, much better when you're not dumping cheap free steel to the market. So this hurts France, Germany, almost all European companies that are trying to compete in the EV race. Which is why Macron is doing what? He's partying, going to strip clubs with President Xi, playing nice with China, and also playing nice with Russia. I mean, they're not even providing a budget or anything. They don't provide any data of any weapons that they're helping or providing Ukraine because they're not anymore. And the U.S. has taken notice. They're like, you know what? F this. I mean, at France, you have to partner with someone, and you're getting screwed every which way. You're just going to partner with the one that's going to work out the best for you. And right now, the terms are so much better with China and Russia than they are with the U.S. But what do you have? You have China pulling all the strings. Yes, we're talking that China where nobody in the U.S. is allowed to say anything bad about China in public anymore. despite creating COVID, which killed close to 7 million people worldwide, including 1.1 million Americans. Can't say anything bad about them. Nope. Wasn't in Wuhan. Suppressed that. Absolutely not. Didn't start in Wuhan. They didn't lie. What? Who cares the common sense part of it, where WHO and all these scientists and doctors wanted to go into Wuhan to see what was going on, and China said, nope, you can't. You can't come in. Where the WHO magically said, without even going into China, that, wow, China handled this so great and so fantastic. So Trump decided to cut the funding to the WHO, and everybody got pissed off. Wonder why the WHO said that. And here's a China's responsible for killing massive amounts of people, hundreds of thousands of Americans since 2021 due to fentanyl. Even after we tipped off China's government to Chinese fentanyl traffickers, what did they do? Nothing. They never took action. Read it. This is according to Brookings report from last year. Hey, we're letting you know where these people are. Go get them. Okay. And they do nothing. And that fentanyl comes here. And yes, that China, which our wonderful politicians love so much, because they're all in bed with them. And man, go down that rabbit hole. Don't use Google and go down that rabbit hole. Holy shit. I'm talking Republicans, Democrats. Why do you think that every single problem is blamed on Russia? Collusion, Biden's laptop, no matter what it is, it's always going to be blamed on Russia because we don't really deal with Russia. We have no ties to Russia. They're not a big trading partner. China, forget it. No way. You want to talk about the demise of Trump, it was when he really started raising tariffs on China. That's when it was like, holy shit, we got to go. I mean, the amount of money, that's what's wrong with the democratic system. If you want to find everything wrong, it's the greatest system on earth. It's easily corruptible. There's so many parties. It's like this, the college admission scandal, right? So hard to get into these colleges, but yet when you're paying like $35,000 to the guy who coaches tennis, and some guy wants to write him a check for $150,000 to have to write a scholarship for their daughter, it's a easily corruptible program that blew up in a lot of famous people's and hedge funds' faces. But it's easy, very easily corruptible because you have so many people, so many moving parts. And it's all about money. It's all about power. But this is the China who's doing all of this. Because now, what do we have? We have this growing hatred of the U.S., and man, is it growing. Where Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, that's the BRICS, but also Saudi Arabia, Argentina, Iran, Indonesia, Turkey, Egypt, all expressing interest in joining an alliance to have their own digital currency to compete against the U.S. dollar. And not own individual, like their alliance to have it, which is pretty smart. And don't forget Malaysia. That's interesting. You see that news that came out last week? Discussing with China to create an Asian fund between nations to help reduce reliance on the U.S. dollar. This is all news stories from the past couple of months. When have we ever seen this? We've seen here and there and someone talking shit or whatever. We don't see them on public forums at summits like this, yelling, wanting us to hear this. Even Singapore discussed a topic last month, reducing its need for the U.S. dollars. It gets stronger, it's harder to compete. Singapore, where everyone speaks English. They're supposed to love us the most. I've been to Singapore. I don't think anyone speaks another language other than American, English, whatever. It's crazy. What a beautiful place, by the way. Now, why am I bringing this up? What does this mean? Why is this such a big deal to you? It means earnings, inflation, the Fed. These are big problems, temporary in nature or cyclical. I've argued with this cycle, it's probably going to last a few years instead of a month, which we're used to when we have a downturn over the past 11 years because you had the Fed there to back us up. You have COVID, trillions comes into the market, we have one bad month. Everything goes back to normal, and then we surge. Everything's fine. What was it, 9 months, 10 months maybe during the credit crisis? We were fine. We're okay. Everything's cool. It wasn't like the dot-com era, that 3 years. For now that you don't have the Fed there, it's going to take longer and longer. So those are cyclical in nature. Right? Weak demand, high rates, recession, low GDP, cyclical, and wait it out. And then, now these problems look like little tiny pebbles on the side of a massive volcano that's about to erupt. That's what's going on right now. And I'm not this fear monger. You've listened to me for what? I'm an old crazy bastard now. I'm 50 years old. Man, I'm old. You don't hear me shouting like this. Stuff they have to be worried about. But man, announcement after announcement, joining alliances, all these countries. But for your portfolio, it means that you should have solid allocations to certain sectors. And there's 3 super important sectors that should account for about 12 to 15% of your portfolio. Daniel and I are going to talk about these in detail on Wall Street Unplugged Premium tomorrow. But if you listen to some of these stories, you're probably not familiar with them. Maybe 1, 2 here or there. But again, this has not been mentioned like publicly and freely by these other countries at major events, conferences, state dinners, where so many countries just outright hate the U.S. right now. It wasn't a big deal when you look at, we have problems with Russia, we have problems with China, or parts of Europe. Alone they can't do much about it, but together, along with adding the BRIC nations, all the BRIC nations, hey, holy cow, that's a serious threat. You should pay attention to it. Again, it's just one of the main topics we'll be discussing on Wall Street Unplugged Premium, covering lots of stories, which sounds insane. I mean, it does sound insane even when I say it, right? The U.S. dollar could lose its reserve currency status, and it's not going to happen right away. But the fact that these initiatives are taking place, you have to stand up and take notice. And just do the research yourself. Start looking at it. Because when you look with Bretton Woods, right, New Hampshire, only a 3-week meeting. That was in 1944. That's when the U.S. dollar became the official reserve currency right after World War II, right? 44 countries were there. Gold was the basis for the U.S. dollar. Other currencies were official pegged to it. Everybody remembers that 1944. What people don't remember is it became fully functional. It took to 1958. Holy cow, that's a long time. I'm not saying this is going to happen quickly. But the fact that it's starting is seriously. And there's lots of money to be made and lost if you're paying attention. Again, I don't expect this to happen anytime soon, but this should really scare you. And this is serious stuff right here. Because as insane as it sounds, the U.S. dollar losing reserve currency style, again, I always thought so. I always thought it sounded crazy until we decided to spend trillions post-COVID after every asset class returned to new all-time highs. Until you research history, where every 80 to 100 years, this pattern of a new global currency emerges. Great Britain, Portugal, Spain, Netherlands, now the U.S. It's the reason why Xi is actually saying that. Every 80, 100 years, he just recently said that. That's why we have to reduce our reliance. It's time for change. Until you see how much gold Russia and China have been buying over the past couple of years, do your research. Look at the charts. Why would they be doing this for? And all this shit sounds crazy until you see the skyrocketing volume of the ruble yuan trading. Right? It's trading volume to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Look at the volume in transactions. Ruble yuan trading volume. It's insane. Sounds crazy until you see for the first time ever dozens of major countries, developed nations talking publicly in a coordinated effort. All at the same time to wean themselves off the U.S. dollar by starting a universal digital currency. Yeah, this idea sounds crazy until you have the U.S. government shutting down things like crypto out of nowhere. Why? What was the threat? Banks were embracing it. Why? Why are you shutting off banks that had nothing to do with fraud, that were doing the right thing? Why did you close our bank? Why? Why are you doing everything in your power to keep the dollar strong? Interesting. Do you see this threat coming as well? How do you keep it strong? Raising rates, which will attract more foreign capital. Well, almost every other country has stopped tightening. Have you noticed that? And it sounds crazy until you see the two biggest alternatives to the US dollar, which are Bitcoin and gold. Have you seen where they are right now? Gold, all-time high, just off of it. Bitcoin was 15,000 recently. It just broke 30,000. Why do you think that's happening right now? Because I could tell you something. That's a lot of freaking coincidences. This isn't just one or two things and you're like, no freaking way, no. I mean, those are facts I'm telling you about. And I know there's diehards and people being, Frank, you're crazy, it's nuts. Again, I'm not someone that says shit like this lightly. But you're seeing this change. When you see politicians spending trillions with total disregard of anything, they don't care. Where there's no consequences for their action at all. They'll get reelected no matter what. No matter how many places they destroy, people are still going to vote Democrat. No matter how much the Republicans mess up in certain areas, they're still going to vote Republicans. There's no change. There's no change here. And more importantly, you could do whatever you want, get caught in lies. You could go on under oath testimony, show pictures, and get caught completely, and there's still no consequences for your action. What do you think is going to happen? It's going to entice everyone who's not messing around, fucking around, to start doing things because they're seeing everyone else benefit. You see some kid rob a store and gets a new TV, and then you're like, wow, that's messed up. And then all the other friends do it, and everybody else does it and does it. You know what? You're going to feel like an idiot. You know what you're going to do? You're going to try to rob a store and grab a TV because everybody else just got it for free. You're promoting this. You're promoting spending. You're promoting just unbelievable amounts of debt. I mean, trillions, guys, trillions. Would it take 200 years to spend $1 trillion? We're spending trillions for a few months now. The debt ceiling, good luck. If the politicians were smart, they'd sign a deal right now. They don't want to see a weaker dollar, which you're going to see if they don't sign a deal. But their egos are so inflated, and they're going to fight for all of this bullshit for their communities, for themselves, or whatever, that they better start looking at the bigger picture. Because dollar weakens, that's not a good thing. You want to keep the dollar strong. But I tell you, the coalition, the unity among so many countries, the coordinated effort, pay attention. It's going to influence a lot of sectors. And I'm not talking about sectors that, I own this stock or that stock. I'm talking about sectors. I'm talking about gold not going to 3,000, but 15,000. Bitcoin going to 100,000. Massive, massive moves. If this really develops the way I think it is. And it looks that way. And the U.S. is just falling asleep at the wheel. I'm sure I'm going to get a ton of emails about this. Feel free to email me, frankcurzioresearch.com. I'm here for you. I'll take it. Yell at me. Call me crazy. But provide research for me. I don't mind anyone disagreeing. I don't mind anyone having an opinion. But support it. I've been wrong before. Not often. I try to tell my wife I'm never wrong. I've been right more than I'm wrong when it comes to stocks. I wouldn't be doing this. But yes, I've been wrong. If you have a difference of opinion, let me know. Or maybe you have more information about this, let me know. I'm here, frankcurzioresearch.com. Anyone who emails me knows that I answer a lot of those emails. Anyway, Wall Street on Premium. It's going to be tomorrow. That's our new podcast, just $10 a month. Also gives you access to a Dollar Stock Club portfolio, which we give you a trading idea, Daniel and myself, every single week, which we track, provided by Up To Price For. Highlight the catalysts in the podcast. One with detailed analysis in the markets, stocks making the news. It's an hour long, that podcast. It's been huge since we launched. Just the reviews have been amazing, and I appreciate that. I told you we're going to provide a very, very, very detailed, really no-nonsense podcast, and we want to charge for it. And we should, because the details you're getting there, the fact that we're independent, we could talk about this, no holds barred, not tied to anyone, we don't get paid by third parties. We say, basically, what we find and what we know about through our research, which is 100% independent. So I really appreciate all the reviews for Wall Street on Premium. If you're interested, go to wsuoffer.com to subscribe. You can cancel anytime you want, but it's just a monthly service for only $10 a month, which includes a portfolio. And again, this is just one of the topics that we're going to discuss, along with getting it deep in detail with many, many, many topics that people don't want to talk about. However, it will lead to more profits for you and also to avoid the sectors that won't benefit when a lot of this shit goes down. So guys, that's it for me. Questions or comments? I'm here for you, frankcurzioresearch.com. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Take care.